My guest today is Superintendent Todd Bowling. Todd, welcome back to another Super Chat.
Good afternoon, Gary.
As you know, there have been many innovations in public education, but we often hear the term 21st century learning. In your view, what does 21st century learning really mean?
Yeah, so 21st century learning is a little bit new, but becoming quite common for school districts. It basically refers to a certain core competencies such as collaboration, digital literacy, critical thinking, empathy, and problem solving, and what schools need to do to help each student thrive in today's world, because as we know, it's ever changing. The other thing it's about is giving students the skills that we think are necessary to succeed in this new world and helping them grow to the confidence to practice and install these skills. And most importantly, how do you deal with all the readily information that's available to them? 21st century skills are going to focus more on making sense of the information. I mean, for example, when we went to school, most of our information, if we'd had to do a research paper, came from encyclopedias. Now you have a wealth of information at their hands and their smartphones. So things are changing.
Yes, definitely. Well, specifically, when you zero in on Northwest Local School District, how are you working to create a 21st century educational system?
Yeah, and what I'd like for our folks to know is this year we started to be part of a SOAR network, and it's sponsored by Patel for Kids, and it's a collaboration network that involves two cohorts. They started a cohort last year of 18 school districts, and now another 18 this year that we are a part of in year 2, all in Ohio. But we also have access to the SOAR network throughout the United States. It's a network that basically shares ideas, professional practices about preparing our students for 21st century learning. And it just gives you a clear definition that right now we don't even know the jobs that our kindergarten students will apply for because they haven't been created yet. Things are changing and we need to keep up with the changes. So we're working as a district to define our characteristics of 21st century skills.
You know, your students now have access to one-to-one technology, which opens up so many new possibilities. Could you give an explanation to our listeners, just so everybody's clear, what does this really mean, this one-to-one?
The one-to-one is a process, first of all, but what it means is that we have Chromebook computers in each of our schools so that we have one Chromebook per student. As with any process, it takes time for folks in education to adjust to change, but we know our kids have access to a computer that is faster now than everything they've ever had with a phone in their hand. And if their parents haven't allowed them to have a phone yet, they at least have access to a computer at home, most likely, and they definitely have it with our Chromebooks. So what this allows is teachers to use a variety of instructional strategies. It gives us the ability that we're continuing to work on, allowing students to move at different levels. So if some kids have grasped a concept and showed mastery, they can move on by using certain programs or certain Google Classrooms to go ahead and get their work done. And others that might need remediation, there are programs in place that will help them deal with that. So it really affects the academic growth of our kids. It gives a variety of strategies that our teachers can use. Basically, our next step is we need these Chromebooks to go home with each kid. Problem we're running into there is we got to make sure that we have Wi-Fi access at each of our homes. But if you look around a lot of the restaurants, I mean, places like Starbucks have had it for a while, but now we have McDonald's and other places getting it. So our kids can get access to it in a different variety of ways. So one-to-one is the first step, but it also takes professional development for our teachers. And so we can help them feel comfortable with how they display the information.
Well, you know, using technology is really so much a part of students' lives. I mean, they've grown up with it. And it just seems to me that it likely puts them in a little bit more of a mindset of it's easier to engage because it's where they're coming from. It's what they know. Is there an element of that plays into this?
It is. And we're not only worried about allowing our students to use the Chromebooks, but working with our parents, because parents have fears and concerns that kids will get on websites or go to places that they should not be visiting because it is overload on information. We also don't want the kids to just be glued to a computer. If you go back to what we talked about with 21st century skills, communication skills are huge. Collaboration is huge. Can you get along with others? And we're not talking through text or Snapchat or any of those social media stems, but just how do our kids use the wealth of information and then how do they communicate it? So it comes with parents working with us working with parents, trust is involved, and then making sure our students can only get a hold of what's beneficial for them.
Does a little bit of that kind of come into the equation when we hear the term digital citizenship in teaching students about what's smart, what's not so smart? You know what I mean?
Yeah, digital citizenship is changing, but it comes in two forms. So if you take parents and where we were back 25, 30 years ago, all our banking involved walking into a bank, making a transfer, checking our accounts, and then writing a check to pay a bill. Nowadays, you don't write checks anymore. It's all debit related. You can do everything you need on your phone, in your hand, and take care of it. But the other thing we have to be careful with digital citizenship is be respectful of others. It's really easy to bully and harass from sitting behind digital media and using computers and phones, but it's also a responsibility that comes with the use also.
Mm-hmm. You know, this may seem like somewhat of a philosophical question, but I wanted to ask you this anyway. What do you see as the portrait of a graduate today?
Yeah, so we are very excited about the portrait of a graduate because we're not just talking about high school. We're talking about a pre-K through 12 initiative. And so what we've done is, as district leaders, we've intentionally created awareness of why change is necessary in shaping the direction of our schools. As you know, over the past couple conversations, we've talked about Ed Choice. We've talked about all the testing that kids have to go through and how that system is flawed. So we are starting conversations around how the world and society is changing, how the workforce needs are changing, and how we need to redesign educational experiences that'll better prepare our students for their ability to compete in the 21st century. Robotics is huge. We need to make sure that kids understand it's about what will evolve and what will appear in front of them and not living in the same way that we have in the past. So with that, we've developed an executive committee that consists of a large variety of stakeholders. This includes local business owners, police chief, communities of faith, higher education, our local colleges, social service agencies, district leaders, our school board members, our families, our community members, educators, and other valued stakeholders. So we've started this executive committee that will basically identify the competencies of what we want our students to graduate with. It's going to be very important that we work with all our stakeholders to make sure that our kids, as they enter preschool all the way through graduation, that they are adjusting to the ever fast changing workforce. And so when our students enlist, we want them to do one of the 3 E's. And the 3 E's stands for enlist, enroll, or employ. So we want them to either enlist or employ immediately from the skills or trades they've learned, or we want them to enroll in a 2-year or 4-year college. So I think the portrait of a graduate follows directly and ties into our strategic plan, and it's just going to be a great pathway and way to bring our stakeholders together. I mean, by bringing the business leaders, our hope is not to ask them for money, ask them to donate this, although we will accept it. But it's more importantly, what skills do you want your employees to have? Because the goal of any community is to have your kids graduate, continue to live in the community, and then be active participants. So we're really excited about that.
Sure. Northwest Local currently works closely in partnership with Butler Tech to prepare students for after graduation, in creating a job and career path. So how does this partnership play into the 21st century learning system we've been discussing?
And Butler Tech fits many ways, as we've talked before. It is a great opportunity for our kids. And they can help with all 3 E's. They can help with direct employment by participating in their programs. The kids are leaving with a developed skill or trade, ready to start out in the workforce immediately. They can advise kids on enlistment into the armed forces if that's the avenue they want to go. And lastly, some of our Butler Tech kids, just like all of our regular kids, have access to CCP, College Credit Plus classes. So kids are leaving with credits established and can attend a 2 or 4 year college. So Butler Tech provides another opportunity that helps with the 3 E's, and it's a very valuable partnership for us.
Yeah, valuable partnership indeed. Things are changing. The whole employment scene. Well, Todd, I have one final question to ask you today because I think it's important to follow up on this after the previous shows we've done. So can you give our listeners an update on the Ohio EdChoice situation? What can you tell us?
Yeah, it's been a lot of action and a lot of things done since we last talked, but unfortunately no solutions. So very proud to represent our district, took a couple administrators with us. We addressed the Senate through open committee hearings about EdChoice and how it would affect our funding. Right now, they're at a standstill where the Senate wants their proposal to go through, which is in any school with an A, B, C, or D, and not in the lowest 20% would be removed from EdChoice. And then the House's recommendation is, the school districts have a flawed reporting system. The state started this issue. The state needs to pay for it. So it's removing all of the EdChoice requirements and putting the funding solely on the state of Ohio. So what that means is that based on the poverty level of a family would determine whether you qualify for EdChoice or not. And that goes back to the original intent of school choice. And what that was is giving families the opportunity who could not afford private schools a way to attend if they're economically disadvantaged and cannot afford it. So our hope, and we support House Bill 89 strongly, is that it does get pushed through. But right now, the next thing that's in place is a rally for public schools on Wednesday, March 18th. We will be putting this information out to our parents. It will be at the lawn of the State House in Columbus. There will be a general rally at 3 o'clock and a press conference at 4. And we're asking for support for public schools because basically what's happening is we're basically subsidizing private education with public funds, and we've got to put a stop to this. So that's the next thing on the target. And the overall decision has to be in place by April 1. So that's what we're waiting on.
Wow. Well, Todd, this conversation today has been very enlightening, and I certainly hope stakeholders appreciate hearing this report directly from you. I've enjoyed talking with you about one-to-one. It's an exciting thing, this whole 21st century education system, and you're building it, and I think that's wonderful. Todd, thank you for joining me today here on SuperChat.
Thanks, Gary. Always appreciate talking to you. Have a great day.